2,500 years ago, in the middle of the desert where daytime temperatures soared above 50 degrees Celsius, and there was no rain. For months, the Persians made ice. They didn't bring it down from the mountains. They didn't store the winter's leftovers. They made it on the spot, in the summer, in a land where summers never freeze, without electricity, without a single moving mechanism, without chemical refrigerants, and without a single watt of power from any source. And they didn't just make a little ice for one evening. They froze it by the ton and stored it all summer long, to chill food, treat the sick, and serve iced desserts to nobles in 40-degree heat. Today, to get that same ice, you pay a monthly electricity bill, and if the power goes out, the contents of your refrigerator will spoil within 24 hours. But if this technology was so good, why did we stop using it entirely? And if it works as well as the surviving buildings claim, should we bring it back? Let's figure it out. The idea of cooling a space without burning fuel or consuming energy is one of the oldest engineering solutions in human history. People sought ways to beat heat long before the concept of electricity even existed. In ancient Egypt, servants placed flat clay trays of water on rooftops at night, and by morning they skimmed off the thin layer of ice even when the air temperature hadn't dropped below freezing. In ancient Rome, wealthy families buried snow brought from the mountains in deep pits packed with straw to preserve it for months. In India and the Middle East, water was poured into clay jars with porous walls, and slow evaporation through the clay cooled the contents below the air temperature. All of these systems were passive. They had no motor and relied solely on form, material, and the laws of nature. But no civilization perfected this idea to such an extent as the Persians. What others considered a household trick, they turned into industrial infrastructure. A real breakthrough occurred around 400 years BCE. On the parched plateaus of central Persia, in cities like Yazd and Kerman, where life was impossible without an intimate, almost mathematical understanding of the behavior of air, water, and heat. Persian engineers built a structure they called yakhchal, from the words yak, meaning ice, and chal, meaning pit. Externally, it is a huge clay dome, a cone up to 18 meters high, concealing a deep underground storage chamber. It couldn't be built with ordinary clay because ordinary clay gets soggy and leaks heat. So the Persians developed a special mortar called sarooj, a mixture of sand, clay, lime, ash, goat hair, and egg white, mixed in precise proportions. This composition was both waterproof and thermally insulating, and its strength rivaled that of concrete. Sarooj was their patent, a recipe passed down from generation to generation. And this is no legend. Several such domes, including the yakhchals in Maibad and Yazd, still stand in the desert hundreds of years after they ceased to be serviced. The reason the yakhchal made ice where it seemed physically impossible wasn't due to a single clever trick, but to four principles working together. The first and most important of these was radiative cooling into the night sky. During the day, everything in the desert is scorching hot, but at night, when the sky is clear and dry, every surface on Earth radiates heat directly into the cold of space, and space is about minus 270 degrees Celsius. If nothing interferes with this radiation, the surface can cool 5, 10, or even 15 degrees below the ambient air temperature. The Persians poured a thin layer of water into shallow channels dug in the shade of long adobe walls, and on a single clear night, this water radiated so much heat into the sky that it froze even though the air itself remained above freezing. The second principle was evaporative cooling. The yakhchal was fed by water from a qanat, an underground canal that stretched for kilometers from the mountains. The cool water, evaporating, drew heat from the air, further lowering the temperature. The third principle was thermal mass. The 2-meter-thick sarooj walls conducted heat so slowly that the underground chamber remained ice-cold while the heat raged outside. And the fourth was the draft effect. A hole at the top of the dome vented heated air upward, drawing hot air out of the pit and creating a constant, gentle ventilation that carried away residual heat. All four effects reinforced each other. The result was a structure that froze water at night, collected this ice, and stored it for months in the heart of the hottest desert on the planet. And the effectiveness of this system is no poetic exaggeration. The very fact that desert cities relied on yakhchals for centuries as a standard for cold storage, not a novelty, is proof of this. A large yakhchal could accumulate tons of ice during the winter and cold nights, and hold it until late summer with losses unimaginable in today's passive storage systems. And the underlying physics has been rigorously confirmed in our time. In 2014, Stanford University researchers led by Shanhui Fan's group published a study in the journal Nature proving that a specially designed surface can radiate heat into the sky even in direct sunlight and cool almost 5 degrees below air temperature without consuming any energy. In other words, modern science has merely rediscovered and measured the very principle that Persian builders intuitively used 2,000 years ago. What is being touted as a breakthrough in passive radiative cooling in the 21st century stood as a clay dome in the desert before most of the empires we know were born. So why did we abandon it? The answer, as always, lies not in physics but in economics. In 1834, Jacob Perkins patented the vapor compression cycle. The mechanical compression of refrigerant, the same principle that powers your refrigerator today. Then, in the first half of the 20th century, Freon and cheap electricity came along, and manufacturers like General Electric made the electric refrigerator a mass-market product, churn out on an assembly line, and sold to every home. And then the same thing happened that kills the best technologies time and time again. No one gathered in a room and voted to destroy the yakhchal. It's just that the system rewarded not longevity or independence, but a low price tag at the time of purchase. An electric refrigerator was cheaper to install right now, even if it broke down, needed refrigerant, made noise, and sent you a bill every month for the rest of your life. The yakhchal required land, craftsmanship, and an understanding of where you lived. It can't be churned out on a conveyor belt. And as colonial modernization and the oil economy spread across the world, the knowledge of how to build a house that cools itself was declared primitive, while a machine that guzzles energy and is designed to break down was called progress. We didn't lose the yakhchal because it stopped working. We traded an eternal structure for a constant payment and called it convenience. So, should you build something like this on your property? The honest answer depends entirely on where you live. Radiative cooling works best in dry climates with clear nights in the southwestern United States, in the Mediterranean, and in steppes and semi-deserts. In humid climates, water vapor in the air intercepts some of the radiation and the effect weakens. Just like a turbine fan is useless in a windless area. But the principle scales down. The simplest approach is a flat pan radiative cooler, a shallow, insulated tray of water covered with reflective film underneath and exposed to the night sky, away from walls and trees that radiate heat back. On a clear night, such a panel will cool the water below the air temperature, and the materials cost $20 to $40. A more serious option for a country house is a buried ice cellar made of massive walls with a ventilation exhaust above, a modern replica of a yakhchāl, where a thick thermal mass and underground temperature maintain the cold without a single watt. And if you want radical autonomy, you connect the cold chamber to the ground circuit. You bury a pipe about 2 meters deep, where the ground maintains a temperature of about 12 degrees Celsius year-round, and pump air through it into the house. This is an air conditioner that works even during a complete power grid failure. And here's the final, crucial detail. A yakhchal has no compressor, no refrigerant, no motor, no moving parts whatsoever. This means there's nothing to break down. The only maintenance required in its lifetime is the occasional resurfacing of the clay plaster to keep the walls intact and keeping the vent open. It's not an appliance you maintain. It's a permanent part of the building, built into its very structure. While a typical refrigerator requires a repairman every few years and a complete replacement after 10 to 15, yakhchals sit in the desert, working for hundreds of years after their last owners have abandoned them. Yakhchal is a 2,000-year-old answer to a 21st century problem. If you let physics do its work, the weight of the air, the chill of the night sky, and the silent mass of clay, it will turn heat into ice, without a net, without counting, without the endless chain of breakdowns that defines the modern home. Much of what this channel covers was almost lost, not because it stopped working, but because industry decided that simplicity wasn't profitable enough. If recovering this forgotten knowledge of self-sufficiency is important to you, then subscribing and reposting are the easiest way to ensure this knowledge continues to be discovered. In this video, we talked about freezing water using the sky. But if you want to see how the same civilization caught wind with clay towers and circulated cool air throughout an entire city without a single fan, then you need to watch our video about the badger, a Persian wind catcher right here.